So what prompted the emergency airworthiness directive that was issued in November 2018? I know the Lion Air tragedy happened, and then after that, the emergency airworthiness directive was issued, and it specifically called for operators of the 737 MAX to revise their flight manuals to reinforce and emphasize to flight crews how to recognize and respond to uncommanded stabilizer trim movement and MCAS events. What prompted that directive?
So thank you for that question. Soon after the accident, it was apparent, the Lion Air accident, it was apparent that it was an MCAS event. And it's important to note that the MCAS is designed so that if it engages when it is supposed to, in other words, in certain angles of attack, which means nose high to the airstream, and under certain conditions, if it were to function, it's designed such that the pilots would not even know that it's operating. So by definition, if it operates when it's not supposed to, which is what happened in both of these cases, pilots would immediately know that something, maybe not the MCAS, and this is why it's very important. An analogy I think that makes sense in this regard is if someone in a restaurant is choking, you don't find out what they're choking on before you administer the Heimlich. It's exactly the same in runaway pitch trim. When a pilot feels the nose going over in his hands, he'll feel it in the yoke. He's trained from the beginning, at least U.S. pilots, and it's not to say that international or not. That's runaway pitch trim. And when the MCAS kicked in when it wasn't supposed to, it drove the nose over. In the pilot's hands, they could feel it. So when we looked at that data and realized by the flight data recorder showed that the runaway pitch trim procedure was not done with Lion Air in the entirety of the flight, we knew that this needs to be emphasized. And that's what the emergency AD did. It said, remember, if you get a pitch over activity in an airplane and you didn't tell the airplane to do it, that's runaway pitch trim. Run the runaway pitch trim procedure. That's why we put in an emergency AD. We also added, and this was important, that before you run that procedure, before you physically turn off those stab trim motors, you still are able to use the trim switch on the yoke. Trim the pressure off the yoke so that instead of feeling it pushing you over and pulling it back and fighting it, trim off that pressure so the yoke is in a neutral state. Very important to do that before turning off those motors. That was also in those instructions. And that became critically important with the Ethiopian accident.